Hello. So I've been putting this off for a long time, for a couple of years, um, about the day that the state took my son. Um, I'll do a little background first. I was 28 at the time when they first took him. I didn't really I'd had some troubles in my life, depression. I'd actually had a couple suicide attempts and other things, but, I'd met a man, got together, Jason, my firstborn son. He wanted a daddy. He wanted a daddy so bad. And when I met Bill, he was so happy. He just, Bill taught him to ride a bike and everything, and he was just so happy to have a daddy in his life. Then I got pregnant, and, I tried to prepare him for when Nicholas was born, and I told him, you're my firstborn, you're special. We will always have that special time before, that was just you and me and whatnot. I just tried to tell him that he would be just as much love and everything, and I thought everything was going to be fine until the day I came home from the hospital. The day I came home from the hospital, he just looked at his baby brother and just started screaming bloody murder. I mean, that night he went to bed and I'm like, I love you. And he's, I love you. And like everything he'd say to me, I'd be like, good night, good night. He just screamed at the top of his lungs. He hated that new baby. And, I was trying to get things together in my life. I started working about the time Nick, he was in his little baby chair. I think he was about 6 months old because I had him in a little baby chair and I went out to clean stalls. And Jason came out to the barn and he wanted to go and play with the neighbor kid. Now, the neighbors, they had 4 boys there, and Sandy, the mom, worked at the post office, and she didn't take very good care of her kids. She was with a new man, and so she was off doing things all the time. Those boys were just constantly alone. So Jason would sneak out of his bedroom window and go next door to play with Lauren. And if I'd call over there, where's Jason? Oh, he's not here. They'd lie and pretend he wasn't there and hide him and whatnot. So anyway, look, I'm in the barn one day, and Nicholas is in his little baby chair. I'm cleaning the stalls. Jason comes out and asks if he could go next door to play. And I said, no, you got to clean your room or whatever it was. And about that time, Nicholas woke up and started crying. And Jason just ran over to the baby chair and just punched the baby in the face. I was like, oh, no, you don't. You go to your room right now. Sent him to his room. And, of course, he took off, split out the bedroom window, went to Lauren's. And, of course, they lied, said he wasn't there when I called. So I'm getting so frustrated. I don't know what to do. So I called CPS myself because I didn't know whether I could even spank my son, whether it was okay. And I called CPS. I told them what was happening, and they told me, oh, yeah, it's legal to spank your kid. Just don't leave marks on him, of course. So the next day, like an idiot, I went and gave the phone number to my son. I said, you know what? These people said that I could spank your butt. If you don't believe me, call them. And I gave him the phone number. Big mistake. Big, huge mistake. I didn't know it at the time, but in Washington State, apparently, if there's 3 calls made to CPS about you, they could come and take your child without even telling you. And I didn't know that. So the first call was when I had worked at 7-Eleven. There was, I got really close with the boss, and so I kind of bumped up, took this other chick's place, being the boss's best buddy. And the boss was loaning me her curling iron and all kinds of stuff like that, giving me the shifts I wanted and whatnot. And this other chick who had been her best friend apparently turned me into CPS. I didn't even know it at the time. I found out later when I read the report. But she turned me in and said that I had sold Jason's bed to buy crack cocaine, which was really amazing because I lived at my mom's house, and the bed that Jason slept in was a hand-me-down bed that I was actually given when I was born. Then my little brother had it. Then it was given to Jason. So it had basically gone through 2 or 3 generations. My mom had it before I was even born. So, yeah, and it was still there at the house. So, yeah, I never sold it for crack cocaine. Sure did it. But anyway, so that was the first phone call. Then the second phone call was mine, of course. And then the third phone call, Jason, one night we were sitting at the table having dinner, and he's mouthing off, saying stuff, and Bill said something to him, and he told Bill to go to hell. And Bill went and washed his mouth out with soap. Well, Jason never brushed his teeth, so his gums bled. And he went to school the next day. Also, oh yeah, he had a bicycle that didn't have a chain guard. We had a big hill in our neighborhood, and he had ridden his bike down the hill without the chain guard, so it nicked his ankle, and he had a little scrape on the inside of his ankle. So the next day, he goes to school, and he's got that phone number, and he called them from the school. He told the teacher that I smoked pot, and then he told them that this is what initially got them out there. He told them that Bill had hit him on the ankle with a steel pipe. That's where he had the little nick from the chain guard. I mean, it was such a tiny little cut. It was like a little scab. Like anybody with a half-ounce brains could say, okay, a pipe wouldn't have done that. If he'd hit him with a steel pipe, he'd probably have like a big bruise or, I don't know, swelling or something, you know, not just a little scab. Anyway, so he calls CPS from the school. At the time I was working, I was really trying hard. We were saving up money. We were going to move out of my mom's, get our own place. You know, I always wanted the perfect house with the white picket fence and the, 2.3 children, whatever, and, the perfect little family that we were all told about when we grew up. So anyway, I come home from work on that Friday. I was working for a horse trainer because I wanted to please my mom as well. I love to please people. I am a Scorpio, so when I lose my temper, watch out, as the saying in the book I read one time says, "Oh, Scorpio, with your tail raised high, you make men's blood boil with rage." Yeah, when I lose my cool, you betcha. But other than that, I'm a very loyal, loving, generous person. And I'm always trying to please people. I'm always trying to make this person or that person happy, thinking about special things, surprises that would just be so great for them. Anyway, I really wanted to make my mom happy. She was hanging out with all these big horse people at the time, going to a lot of horse shows and everything else. I never really enjoyed horse shows. Never. I did it because my friends and my mom and everybody else. So I got a job with this trainer that my mom knew, and we were working reining horses, cutting horses at the time. I was getting up. I was working so hard. I was getting up at like 5 in the morning. I had to be at the barn at like 7 in the morning. Sometimes I didn't get home till 10, 11 at night. I was working so hard, like 7 days a week even. And, like I said, I didn't have much trouble in my past other than the driving on suspended driver's license because I'd get a ticket for no driver's license, then there'd be a requirement to get the driver's license to get that ticket resolved. So I get my driver's license, but then I couldn't pay the ticket. So then they suspend my license. It was like this vicious circle. Back then it was like the circle 22, whatever. And, there was terrible. There was no help for it back then. And so, yeah, that was most of my trouble with the law, was that kind of stuff. So anyway, I'm working. I trying real hard to please my mom, because working with this trainer and raising my 2 kids, and and I come home from work. It's a Friday night. It was a beautiful day, much like today. Nice, beautiful spring day. I come home. I got off work early. It was Friday. He never let me off work early, but for some reason, this particular Friday, I get home, and everybody was gone, and there's like this piece of paper on the front door. When I get out and I get up to it, and I could see King County Police across the top. I'm like, oh my God, what? So I read it, and I don't remember the exact words, but basically it was, King County Police, we have your child. He's in protective custody. By law, for 72 hours, we don't have to tell you anything. No number, no nothing, just that they had my child. So all weekend long, I'm freaking out. I mean, you think these immigrants are freaking out about losing their kids? Imagine coming home and there's just a notice on your door. You don't even have a phone number. You don't even know who to call. All weekend long, I'm freaking out. I'm like, I don't even know what to do. My mom, she finally got a hold of this guy. His name was Napoleon. And all he said was that we have your son and he's safe. And that's all I have to tell you. So I had this hearing come Monday morning. I go into the hearing. They told me what had happened, that, he had called from the school. He told them that I smoked pot, and he told them that Bill had hit him with his steel pipe. So the police had been called. Bill had to go through the police thing. He ends up taking a deferred sentence, down the road, whatever. I end up having to go to all these hearings. I go downtown for one of the hearings, and my public defender, she was this big, fancy, tall, leggy, blonde, and rich-looking jewelry, the whole bit. And she tells me, all I remember is being in this skyscraper downtown, and she tells me, here, sign this paper. Well, I'm thinking, she's my public defender. Of course, she's going to tell me the right things, right? I look at the paper. It says dependency. I'm young. I'm stupid. I don't know. I'm thinking dependency means that he's my dependent. So I signed the paper. Find out later that I was basically signing away my rights to dependency for my child. I gave my rights away to the state, and I didn't even know it. But she told me, she said, sign this paper, and your son will be home tonight. Well, he was. He got to come home that night. It was Friday. 3 days later, that Monday morning, this lady comes and she says, I'm here to pick up Jason. I'm like, what? What do you mean? I'm taking him back. Come to find out, I had signed away my parental rights, signed away my dependency, gave it to the state. They came and picked him up 3 days later. And so I ended up going to hearings every 3 months for years because they wanted me to, after Bill got his, it was proven Bill didn't hit him. Jason actually admitted it later. So everything was about that he told him I smoked pot. He told him that we drank Budweiser beer as well, which we did. And we recycled bottles. So a lot of times we left them on the counter in my mom's. There'd be a half case, whatever, bottles sitting there. So I guess as a kid, you'd see all these beer bottles, they didn't get taken out right away. Sometimes they'd sit there a week or more, whatever. But we only drank on weekends. We didn't drink all the time. But he saw those bottles, and he told his teacher that we drink Budweiser beer, and the bottles were there, and that I smoked pot, which I don't even know how he knew I smoked pot, because I tried to hide it from him the best I could. I didn't smoke weed around him. But anyway, so I'm going to start crying, so I got to get back on track. All right, so I'm going to these hearings every 3 months. At one point, I go on town meeting with Ken Tram, and I actually even got to talk. It was funny. I'm sitting in the front row, and I was so nervous, and they had the commercial break, and Ken Tram walks in front of me, and I'm like, oh my God, I bet you they won't even call on me. They won't even ask me. And right as soon as the commercial break was over, he came over and grabbed me by the arm and stood me up and had me waiting. And I got to talk and ask the attorney questions. So after the show, the attorney made an appointment with me, and he told me that he knew my case, that he knew everything, and he said that I was being used to set an example, that the state had gotten in trouble because right before they took Jason, these children had burned up in a mobile home. The grandma had called CPS and reported her own daughter several times. CPS didn't go get them. And then one night she was in a bar drinking, and she'd left them home, and the mobile home caught fire, and they were both killed. So CPS was in a lot of trouble. So the attorney told me that I was being used to set an example, and that for $1,000 he could have Jason back next week. Bill was working, but he had child support coming out. We had no money. $1,000 may as well have been $100,000 at the time. I didn't have it. But he told me Also, he told me that my public defender, the one that got me to sign the dependency paper, she was apparently getting a promotion. She was getting promoted to the prosecutor's office. I was her last case. She had to finish my case before she could, take her new job. She tricked me. She literally tricked me into signing that paper and signing away my parental rights so that she could go start her new job. I mean, what kind of a person does that? What kind of a person tricks someone into signing a paper that's basically going to get their child taken away just so she can start a new job early? What a horrible person. So, and Ann Pokanen. I'll never forget Ann Pokanen. She's the counselor from Shadow Lake Elementary in Maple Valley, Washington. She's the one that helped my son get all this stuff going. Got him taken away, helped him call CPS when I gave him the number. Yeah, Ann Pokanen. Never forget that woman. So anyway, sign away my rights. They take my kid. I'm on town meeting. They tell me what happened. So I'm going to these meetings or hearings up North Seattle, every 3 months at the child court place. And it's all about me quitting smoking pot. I had to take a pee test every 3 months. And I basically refused because stupid. Yes, going back, I would do anything. I would change everything. But you know what they say about hindsight. And at the time, my mom was influencing me. Bill, my friend Bernadette Jones, who was telling me, hey, you don't have no problems. You ain't done nothing wrong. You shouldn't have to take a pee test. My mom's telling me the same thing. You shouldn't have to take a pee test. You don't have a record or anything. You shouldn't do it. So I'm listening to all these people in my life, and I'm telling the state to go take a flat hike. I ain't going to take the pee test. So they wouldn't let, Jason would get to come home for visits. But then when he'd come home for visits, he would act out. I would entertain him. I would let him do anything he wanted because I wanted him to be happy. I wanted to please him. And then he'd go back and he'd act out. And then they'd put him on restriction or whatever. Wouldn't let him talk to me because he'd be in trouble. Or he'd go back and tell him that I let him do this or that. One time, actually, he went back and told them that we didn't get to do anything. And I literally got in trouble because I didn't take him out to do anything. I have a letter from the state that says, you don't spend enough money on your son that you should take him to movies. They even had an amount that I should spend, I forgot what it was, like $50 a month or something, taking Jason out to do fun things every month. And I didn't do that, so that was one of the things they used against me. And then that he would act out when he'd go back and things like that. They ended up taking him to Alpine Boys Ranch in Wenatchee, where he was molested they put a boy in there who had been charged with rape and all kinds of other things, and nobody else was told about it. And the kid tried to do something to my son. My son fought back. So they locked my son in a gym for a week in lockdown and wouldn't let him come out. Everything else I found out about it, and I went to this big shindig they had, barbecue. I refused to leave. I wanted to take my son. I told them I was going to go on a hunger strike, and they called the police and had me removed from this big barbecue thing. And of course, Jason's crying. I'm crying. I probably shouldn't have done it, but then I went on a hunger strike. 17 days. My doctor actually literally was about ready to put me in the hospital. I literally didn't eat for 17 days. I was on death's door almost. I mean, it was bad. I could describe the things the body does to you when you don't eat for 17 days, but it's icky. So, like I said, my doctor was about ready to put me in the hospital, and that night, an old friend came over that we hadn't seen in years, came over and brought a bunch of cocaine. I'm fucked up in the head. All these things happening in my life. Excuse my language. I don't know why. I just said, okay. I gave up on my hunger strike because I was like, in my head, telling myself that nobody's going to care. They just let me die anyway, so why bother? Why fight anymore? Just do whatever. Who cares? So I ate a bunch of chicken and the biscuits and cooked it all up. That was the end of that. I had another son too, my younger son, Nicholas. The state never cared about him, not once. Nobody ever came and talked to him. They didn't come to my house to see how I cared for him or what kind of conditions. Nothing. It was all about Jason and that I smoked pot and I wouldn't take a pee test. 9 years. Okay. Towards the end, I got a gas station. I'm doing really good. A while afterwards, let me get back up. The first couple of years were so bad, I almost died when they took Jason. I can't even describe the pain. I think these immigrants might understand the pain. Or someone who's had their child kidnapped. Maybe somebody who's had their child taken to another country, like that fella whose wife took his son to Rio or somewhere in South America, and he couldn't get his son back, and it ended up being a big international thing all over the news. I bet he would understand. It's like, your child's alive. You don't know how they're being taken care of, if they're safe, if they're happy. You don't know. You just know that they're alive and they're somewhere in the world, and you can't see them. You can't hold them or anything. They took away all my years of being able to watch him grow up. Okay. So I'm so depressed. In the beginning, like even when I was still working for the trainer, I ended up having to lose that job because, I couldn't even think straight. I had quit smoking cigarettes and everything. Like I said, I was doing so good before they took Jason. Quit smoking cigarettes. I wasn't drinking hardly at all. Maybe some Budweisers on the weekend. Smoke a little weed at night. That's it. So I'd be lunging a horse. I'd be in the arena, one of the horses that was in training. I was supposed to lunge him. Trainer would come out, and I'd literally just be standing there staring at the ground crying. And the horse would just be standing there staring at me. I couldn't even do my job. I just started drinking. I started doing so much stuff in the beginning, the first few years. I tried to commit suicide so many times. It's like, yeah, and I wasn't there for my younger son. I mean, really, in reality, after they took Jason away, maybe they should have took my younger son away because I was not a good mom to him. I wasn't there for him. So after about 2-3 years of fighting the state and all this happening and suicide and all this, I kind of, I just kind of gave up a little bit. I kept going to the hearings, but I knew I had to get on my feet. I knew I had to get strong. We had moved to Seattle by then, and the gas station across the road from me is in White Center on 17th Avenue. There's a big round Washington Mutual Bank, and behind it there's a gas station there. And my grandma had owned like 3 houses right next to there, and she had passed away. She died on my 29th birthday. I had to pull the plug. She was like, come on, that's another story. Awesome. So anyway, I ended up getting this gas station. I leased this gas station. I've got an 8th grade education, okay? 8th grade dropout. And, but I also had an IQ of 149. Yeah, and so I was on 4th year college levels when I was in like 5th grade. 4th and 5th grade. Anyway, so I taught myself. I took this gas station over. I conned them into letting me in. And I had 5 days to learn the books. The people that had the station, they just left. They didn't teach me anything. They wanted out of there as quick as possible. Maybe that's why I got the gas station, because they couldn't find anybody else. And these people were like, leaving. So, and you had to live at the gas station. That's another thing. It was mom and pop station. So that was part of the contract. I had to live at the gas station. I learned how to do the books. Back then, nothing was digital. This was in 96. You had to dip the tanks. You had to do all that. I had like 8 clipboards full of paperwork. I did it all. I took care of everything. And I was doing so good. So anyway, by then, my mom had hooked up with this guy she was dating. And he decided that he didn't like us. He didn't like me and Bill. So my mom kind of turned on me. And instead of supporting me with CPS, all of a sudden she started supporting them and giving them information about me and, pretty much stabbing me in the back. And so, like one night, it was Christmas. This is before I even got the gas station, when I was still on drugs and all messed up. Ooh, I won't cut myself. When I was all messed up, we were living up on Tiger Mountain. We had nothing. We didn't have anything. Bill and I and Nick were sleeping up there. We had built this cabin ourselves up Tiger Mountain. No power. We had a wood stove. We'd boil water, put it in this big tub. That's how we bathed. Anyway, Christmas is coming. I wanted to get Jason for Christmas. I contacted CPS to try and get him. And they told me no. They said that he was in trouble and that he couldn't come home for Christmas. So I was so heartbroken. I had no money, really. There was nothing I could do. All I wanted was my children for Christmas. So I couldn't do anything for Nick. So I told my mom, I'm like, Mom, I can't even get him a gift, whatever. Will you please take Nicholas for Christmas? And she said, yeah. So that night, I let Nick go to my mom's. Bill and I stayed up at Tiger Mountain by ourselves in this cabin. We had no money. We had nothing. We had like a couple bucks. We went to McDonald's. Back then you could get these 49-cent cheeseburgers. It's Christmas Eve. We went and got like 6 49-cent cheeseburgers. Went up to the cabin. I remember it was Christmas Eve. It was still daylight. We ate those crappy little dried up cheeseburgers and just went to bed because we were so depressed, so sad. So anyway, after the weekend's over, Nick comes back. He's so happy. He's so excited. And he's all like, Mom, you'll never guess what Grandma got me for Christmas. I'm like, what? Jason! She got me Jason! He was in a box. He was all wrapped up in a box with a big bow on it, and I opened it, and Jason just popped out. My mom had gone to CPS behind my back and told them that I didn't have any money, that I couldn't do anything. So CPS actually lied to me by saying Jason was in trouble, and they went and let him go with my mom for the Christmas holiday. So she basically had both my kids. Oh, and then this is the best part, too. I wasn't speaking to my best friend at the time, Bernadette Jones. My mom took both my kids over to her house, and they spent the night over there on the Christmas weekend, too. So, yeah, everybody got everything, happiness and whatnot, while my husband and I got left out in the cold. Well, we weren't married yet. That's later on when I got the gas station. That was also part of the contract that I had to marry Bill. So fast forward back to the gas station, back to my mom hooking up with the dentist, and he doesn't like us, so she turns on me, starts testifying against me with CPS. Got my gas station. Well, actually, right before I got the gas station is when I lost custody completely. I'm sorry I skip around in this video. That's why I've waited so long to do this, because it's so many years worth of heartbreak. Anyway, so I got my final hearing downtown King County Courthouse, because they're going to try to take away my parental rights completely. My mom's going to testify against me. And so I had this girlfriend at the time, Kim Everett, because Bernadette and I were on the outs at the time. So Kim was doing a lot of crack at the time, and she went with me down to the courthouse, right? So all day hearing, and I brought her for support. And so the first half of the day is all them testifying against me. So I'm sitting up at the table where, the defendant sits, listening to my mom and CPS and the workers and everybody tell how horrible I am, what a bad mom and all this. And I kept looking back at my girlfriend, and the whole time she's just sitting there looking at the back wall, and the big clock's on the wall. She just kept looking back at the clock, and I knew it's because she wanted to go home and do her crack. So lunchtime comes. I hadn't even got my chance to testify yet or anything. And my girlfriend, she just wants to go home and do her crack. So I'm like, the heck with it, I'm going to lose anyway. Everybody is against me. I got no support, no help. I just left. Biggest mistake I ever made. No, maybe the biggest mistake was just listening to my mom or my friends or anybody, all those people, because all those years they're telling my son, every time he'd go to visit them, they'd tell him what a horrible mom I was too. And then in the neighborhood where I grew up, he started hanging out with some of the kids from friends that I grew up with, like Dawn Merrifield. Oh, God, she's a real piece of work. Yeah, she'd tell my son what a horrible mom I am. But you know what? All these years later, her one son died from a heroin overdose, and her other son's in prison for selling, being a meth dealer. But she was judging me. And also all the people I grew up with, telling my son all the things about me from when I was a kid and everything else, and my mom and everybody, Bernadette, all, you know. So now he grows up and he thinks all these things. We don't really we don't talk at all. Like, I thought when he turned 18 that he would just, like, all of a sudden become an adult and he'd realize what had happened, and he'd just be like, Mom, you know, and we could sue the state and get justice. But that didn't happen. When he turned 18, he just came home and he kind of, like, the day he turned 18, the state threw him out. They didn't want him anymore. He had been with his foster family, and, like, I mean, the day he turned 18, they literally kicked him out. He comes back. He starts selling ecstasy, all kinds of drugs, and doing just going wild. So, you know, we didn't really talk, and I just moved on, and then he ended up joining the Army, and we didn't see each other for years, and he showed up in Colville, and he brought this chick with him, and, you know, I tried really hard to be fair to her and to, you know, make her feel comfortable, make her feel loved, because I knew what it was like to be the stranger chick, you know, like when I went with Jason's dad, and he took me down to California, you know, and he had a family full of 6 kids, and, you know, and all his friends and family down there. I was the stranger, and they hated me, and they treated me bad, and so I knew what it was like, and I didn't want Renee to feel that way, so I tried really hard to be her friend. I took her side against my own son during their fights, and I don't know, that ended up backfiring on me too, and long stories. Now they live in Georgia, and he doesn't talk to me at all. I mean, I know he has his issues. I wish that he could just tell me. I, for years, wanted time with him so that we could just talk, so I could tell him my stories. But every time I try to tell him my side of things, every time I try to tell him how I felt or what was happening, he would just shut me down. No, I don't want to hear it. No, I heard what you are. No, I know what kind of person you are. And just, that's the past. Put everything in the past. Either he